Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, we've talked about this subject matter quite a bit over the past 4 days. Now I was going to be quite brief, somebody sent me a copy of today's Fiji Times front page, quoting Honorable Prasad about, poverty being reduced to 50% being a reality. I feel, therefore, the need to perhaps elucidate this particular subject matter a bit more, and again, try and demystify these half-baked truths that comes out from the opposition. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is that the COVID-19 had such a dramatic and immediate impact on the global economy that no government ever anticipated this. Even a country like Australia that has had 23 years of straight growth, 23 years, one of the longest periods of growth in any of the OECD countries, Mr. Speaker, sir, even they went into a shock. Even they had to go out and borrow large sums of money, as we talked about yesterday. $15.6 billion, Mr. Speaker, sir, they've injected into the economy. 600,000 Australians lost jobs in 1 month. 2/3 of the population of Fiji. In 1 month. That's how dramatic the impact has been. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's no minor feat for any of the economies in the world to be able to deal with this using the normal framework, economic framework. And as we know, Mr. Speaker, sir, we came up very quickly with a COVID-19 budget response. And as highlighted, Mr. Speaker, sir, the revenue decrease was almost $1 billion. It has been buffered somewhat a little bit also by the fact that we had the asset sale of EFL to FNPF that injected slightly over $200 million into government coffers. And we know that, again, traditionally, as has been some of the MDBs have saying, we should not count that as normal revenue. It is not normal revenue. But normal revenue, Mr. Speaker, sir, comes from, of course, VAT, corporate tax, personal income tax, ECAL, STT, immigration fees, departure taxes. They all contribute towards government revenue. There's no departure tax because there's nobody departing or nobody coming in. None of the hotels are filled up. Cinemas are closed even, where we get ECAL and STT. So revenue is dried up completely. But as highlighted yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir, our expenditure only decreased by about $300,000 because we wanted to keep up the government services in all the ministries, including, Mr. Speaker, sir, the additional $100 million as a result of a response to the COVID crisis, which included fundamentally expenditure for Ministry of Health, $40 million, and the balance of it, apart from small amounts, about $700,000 to the Fijian Police Force, to RFMF, and to the FCCC. The rest of it, Mr. Speaker, sir, was for unemployment benefits. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is that that's how we've mitigated this. Now, if this particular crisis actually continues, the impact on government revenue will be even greater. If the economy even becomes even more sluggish, obviously it will be greater. And therefore, our job is to try and put in place various initiatives to encourage confidence, boost of confidence, liquidity is there, try and get business houses to actually have an uptake on those liquid funds that are available. They can do the investments, create the jobs, and one of the areas that we think that there will be a lot of opportunities whilst demand for our goods and services offshore may remain muted, is in the construction sector. Because construction sector itself generates jobs from within. It creates jobs from within. It also has an asset base to it. So if businesses, for example, are given an initiative to build warehouses or housing developments, it will provide assets, it's mortgageable, it's collateral, but it also creates jobs. It's not necessarily dependent on any demand from offshore. Tourism, demand is from offshore. Supply for garments, demand from offshore. Construction is not. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, as anticipated, and we are saying now that, so the other point that I also wanted to highlight, again, one of the former governors of the Reserve Bank has now become a politician, is also now quoting also fanciful figures. The reality of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, the kind of projections that they are saying the amount of money needs to be injected it would mean our deficit would get out of whack. Now, there's no point saying, let's have a 20% deficit. If you're going to have a 20% deficit, you need to actually fund the deficit. Now, who's going to fund the deficit? What will be your funding mix, your mix? Will it be from offshore? Will it be from onshore? And obviously there's a certain amount of money or limited amount of money available onshore to fund the deficits. So, as we've stated, and this is again a strategy, we've said openly about this, in this particular times, our focus is to get funding predominantly from offshore. Why? If you get funding from offshore, it also builds up your foreign reserves. Because we've seen repatriated funds are becoming less. Fijians working offshore, they themselves are finding hard to remain in their jobs, so they have less money to send back home. Similarly, if the tourists aren't coming, your foreign reserves aren't being supplemented with the existing amount of money that we have. As highlighted yesterday, day before yesterday, we have, on the current demand levels, about 6 months' worth of foreign reserves to pay for imports. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to go back again to what Honorable Prasad was talking about, poverty levels going up to 50%. I mean, he knows, we expect him to know this, that the standard poverty measures are based on the concept of individual or family income below a certain threshold. And of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, that's needed to cover basic expenses. We have seen, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I've got the figures here, this across to deposits of residents with banks have increased from around $2 billion in 2006 to around $5 billion now. So in other words, there's a lot more wealth accumulation. And as we have seen, Mr. Speaker, sir, that people obviously, as people, for example, withdraw their funds from the FNPF, or they dip into their savings. So when you have more savings, there's the ability for people to actually not fall within the trap is heightened. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have also said, and we're now paying these fortnightly benefits. We call it unemployment benefits. If we follow the model which Mr. Honorable Prasad seems to be insinuating, we have not put them immediately onto the social welfare system. We're calling them unemployment benefits because they are indeed unemployment benefits. And it's the psychology of it all, Mr. Speaker, sir, because the moment you put people on social welfare benefit, there's like a dependency culture on that. And we're also telling them, you are people that can be employed. The moment the opportunity arises, the moment the bubble opens, the moment the garment factory opens, go back to work. We will till then look after you. And as more time increases, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we go further into this particular space, if there is a need, we will continue to give the unemployment benefits. If there is no need, we pull it back, people get their jobs. This is why there is a verification process. That people need to verify when they get their employment benefits to say that they continue to be unemployed. So I wanted to highlight that, Mr. Speaker, sir, and going forward, as I wanted to say to the members, in the worst case scenario, assuming the borders remain closed for the most of the next financial year, the tax revenue for government is expected to decline to around $1.5 billion in 2020-2021. Around half of the amount we collected pre-COVID-19, Mr. Speaker, sir. So that's the likely scenario at this point in time. We had said that the economy is expected to contract in this supplement book, if you see, pages 9 actually, and see onwards. Mr. Speaker, sir, we said contract by 4.5%, but it will contract by a much larger amount. Because the reality of the matter is that this pandemic has made the economies come to a grinding halt. And we don't expect it to be, we don't expect the borders to open up by next month. So it will be protected, and therefore the economy will contract by a much larger period. We will, the number of surveys are being carried out, the business houses, through ILO, through the other agencies that are carrying out the surveys for us, Mr. Speaker. So we'll have a much better indication as to what the ground realities are. However, in the meantime, we are still looking for opportunities to create domestically that will build up confidence. Those kind of headlines actually don't build confidence. By having those headlines, Mr. Speaker, and I said this before, 80% of the economy is psychology. If people feel confident, they've got money in their pocket, they feel confident, they will invest, they will spend. There's a lot of liquidity in the market. If people feel confident and say, yes, okay, I've got the money here, and I can build my warehouse, I'll build a block of apartments, because I will have it all ready by the time the borders open, because I know the environment is right, the messaging is right, they will do so. And what will happen, it will become self-fulfilling. If they do that, there's a lot more construction going on, then obviously a lot more people will have jobs. If a lot more people have jobs, they'll go out and spend more money. It creates more money within the system itself, consumer demands. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the reality of the matter, and I really urge everybody, please, this is not a time to do political point scoring. This is a time to state the facts. This is a time we need to work together to build the confidence to ensure that we don't have protracted unemployment and be able to get our revenue levels up much quicker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the Honourable Minister.